No idea what to ask you. Let me preface this by saying that this is an interview with Margaret Driscoll, Margaret LeBarton Driscoll.
Mar- Margaret Mary Barbara Driscoll.
LeBarton Driscoll.
Bless the bot.
And it is being done on Sunday, December 18th, 1994.
By whom?
By James Michael Driscoll.
Michael John Driscoll.
Michael John Driscoll. And it's being conducted in Jonesboro, Georgia. Now that we have that for the record, I would like to start, and let's just start with some factual information about who your mother was, and her name, and your father, and if you can remember any of your grandparents' names and things like that.
Okay.
Who was your mother?
My mother's name was Margaret. I don't know her other name, her middle name or anything.
Okay, and her maiden name was?
Hetzlein, H-O-E-T-Z-L-E-I-N.
Ooh, that's good. Okay. And do you remember your grandmother's name?
I think it was Anna Wolbert. W-O-L-B-E-R-T.
Of the Wolberts.
The Wolberts.
Okay. And your father's name and
And my father's name was George. I don't know his middle name. Anything but Lee Barton, L-E-B-A-R-T-O-N.
Okay.
And his mother, I don't know. I don't know what his...
Okay. Let's Donna, you were born on, we can talk about this because nobody will say.
You're not taping this.
Yeah, we're taping this. We can talk about it.
No, you're not taping it yet.
Yes, I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you want to fill in here, in your book, you may have my mother's rest of her names.
Okay.
You know, your
My baby book.
baby book.
Okay.
And what about my father? My dad, you want to know about him?
Yeah, well, go ahead. And I was, okay.
All right, what do you want to
Tell
know?
me about your mother, what you know about her and what you remember about her.
Oh, I remember a lot. She died in 1926, in March the 20th. And she was a sick woman. And she's a pretty lady. What else do I know about her? Oh, I know so much. She used to sing to me. Always managed to have a Christmas tree for me. Even when she was real sick, she used to go get me a Christmas tree that I remember. We lived in a basement in Carrick, Pennsylvania. Had 3 rooms there. And what else can you ask me about her that I'm not thinking of? I was the only child. Oh, she had one other child before me. About 3 years before I was born. Her name was Emily LeBarton. She died of diphtheria right after Christmas.
Before you were born?
About 3 years before I was born. There was no other children.
How'd your mother die? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think she either had consumption or tuberculosis. I was so little, and they never told me what my mother or father died from, which I think should have been told to me.
How old were you when she died?
11.
11. How old was she? Do you know?
About 46, I think, about 46 years. And my dad was around the same age.
Now, when did he die?
1926, October the 20th, 1926.
Okay. Now, he worked in the candy factory?
Yeah, he worked at Reamer's Candy Factory in Pittsburgh. I don't know what he did. He had an office job. And he used to take me through the plant to see them, how they made the candy. It was one of the best candies that was made in Pittsburgh. Used to see them dipping the chocolate by hand. And I remember, as little as I was, that place smelled good.
Where were you born?
In DuBois, Pennsylvania. D-U-B-O-I-S, Pennsylvania.
And then you were you moved to Pittsburgh, or was your mother living in Pittsburgh and you just?
No,
she
they
was in
lived
Du
in
Bois.
Du Bois. Mhm.
So you don't remember how old you were when you moved from Du Bois to?
No, I don't. That I don't know. See, it's been so long ago that they didn't tell me a lot of things.
Mhm. What about now? Growing up, you lived most of the time in Carrick or
Mount Oliver, Pennsylvania, with my uncle, aunt,
Who were?
Louis Hetzlein, Louis P. Hetzlein, and they spelled Hoetzlein. Barbara Hetzlein, my other aunt Mary Rush, or USH. Her daughter was Mary Rush when I moved there. Then she married Ralph Friend, Freund. Then I had a couple other uncles, a couple other aunts in the Hetzlein side.
You remember their names?
Oh, yes.
Well, tell us.
Anna Hetzlein, and she died, I don't know, my mother died in 1926. Well, let's see, 14, I was 1914. I guess she died about 1917 or 18. I'm not sure, but around there. And then my Aunt Emma, she died, I guess, around 1924 in that vicinity. And then my grandmother, Hetzlein, she died right after that. And then I had an Uncle John and an Uncle Frank, all Hetzleins.
Lost my train of thought. Just to make sure, your father died in
Pittsburgh,
what year? I think you said it.
1926.
And your mother died in
1926.
same year.
Same year, 6 months apart. And they're both buried in Pittsburgh. One in St. Joseph's Cemetery in Pittsburgh, and one in Allegheny Cemetery in Pittsburgh. That's on the, or on, I don't know, it's north side or east end.
Did he have any brothers or sisters?
Yes. He had a sister Florence. Oh, he had another sister and a brother that I know, but right now I can't think of their names. What was there? Can't think of them.
The Hetzleins were German.
Yes.
Now,
My grandmother, Hetzlein, and father, were they born in Germany?
so your mother was a first generation in this country.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what part of Germany, but I know they had relatives in the Schaffenburg, Germany. Now, whether they were born there or not, I don't know.
You don't know about the Wolberts, that much about them.
Well, I know Aunt Annie Wolbert, and then that was my grandmother's sister. They had Pete Wolbert, George Wolbert, Lena Wolbert, John, Kate. I don't know of any other ones. Could have been.
I want to stop rocking here because I hear the noise.
Okay.
And
And then they had relatives in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, too.
they were in the Johnstown flood, weren't they?
Yes. That must have been, their name was Hetzlein, so it must have been my grandfather's brother that lived up there. And I don't know, I never knew him, but his name was, his wife's name was Lizzie, and then she had Jose Hetzlein, and Barbara, and Bill. No, skip that, I don't know.
But they all lived in Johnstown.
Yeah.
And they're all Hetzleins.
Yeah, well then some of them got married. One got married.
What?
Barbara married an O'Connell.
Wasn't there a story that you told me about them during the Johnstown floods or something?
Yeah.
They sat on the roof of their house.
They sat on the roof of their house, and they must have had 4 children because they said he took 2 and she took 2 and straddled the roof and figured it. But
Did they tie themselves to the roof or something?
Something like that, and they all survived. Then after that, the Johnstown flood was. They have a big cemetery up there with all the dead of from Johnstown flood.
So you grew up in Mount Oliver after your mother died.
Yeah, Mount Oliver. And then when I got married, I moved to Gibsonia.
But it was 219 Giffen Avenue.
219 Giffen Avenue, Mount Oliver, Pennsylvania. Suburb of Pittsburgh.
North of Pittsburgh.
No, yeah.
No, south of Pittsburgh, on the south side.
Yes, south side.
Tell me what schools you went to and...
I went to St. Basil's School from 6 to 11. And then I went to St. Canisius School. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I didn't go to high school. And then later on I went to Business College, Pittsburgh Business School.
And then went to work for Joseph Horns.
I worked for Kaufman's.
Kaufman's, not Horns.
Yeah, Kaufman's. I worked for Horns for a couple of months, but I didn't like it there. I went to Kaufman's and I liked it there, and I worked there about 20 years. Often for a while I worked steady, and then after Aunt Barb died and that, then I went to just worked a couple days a week.
Let's talk about Dad for a few minutes.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about how you met him.
How did I meet Dad? I had a party at our house. And my cousin's husband asked could he bring Dad to the party.
That was Uncle Mook.
Yeah, Uncle Mook. And I wasn't happy about that. I didn't think, because he asked me to bring his brother first. And I didn't like him. I said, oh, dear God, is that Gordon? He had been ill and was out of the picture. And I guess it was 3 years. He didn't like me and I didn't like him. Neither one of us cared for each other. He used to play dirty tricks on me. Dirty tricks and blame it on me. And then one night I went to, one weekend I went to Olive and Moak's place for the weekend. And they coaxed me to stay because Gordon was away a week, and they coaxed me to stay that day. They said, because Gordon's coming home. And I said, I don't care whether he's coming home. No, they said, stay and see Gordon. So when the phone rang, they lived on the 3rd floor, and when the doorbell rang, Moak was so excited because he just thought the world and all of Dad. And he said, they used to call me Skinny. Skinny, run down and get the door. Run down and get the door. Hurry up. And I opened the door, and your dad was standing there. He said, well, did you miss me? And I said, no, I could have cared less. He said, well, don't you have a kiss for me? And I said, sure. And that's how it all started. And we started. The next week, he came up to the house and asked me to go out with him. And then a couple, well, that was around, I guess, 49 or something. We got married in 53. Then we moved to Gibsonia. We built our house. Dad built most of the house himself. Did a lot of work in it.
Didn't you tell me one time that he started building it before he ever asked you to marry him?
Yeah, the whole house was done before he asked me to marry him. I used to say, who are you building this for? He'd say, oh, I'll tell you someday. Well, I'm helping you up here. You didn't even ask me to marry you. So he said, the day will come. And when it was all done, he took me in the living room and knelt down beside the fireplace and asked me to marry him. It sounds like that, doesn't it?
So it was May 2nd, 1952. 53. What do you remember about his family? I mean,
he had, Grandma Driscoll, his mother was Kathleen Driscoll. And then she had Gordon, Bill was the oldest. She had a son, Bill. He was killed in the Second World War. And Bill, and then Gordon, And then she had a daughter, Kathleen, and then Bob Driscoll.
He was the youngest.
I think Bob was the youngest. I'm not sure. I think. And then Bob married Sheila. What was Sheila's name? Leonard. And they had 4 children, set of twins. Kathleen was the first daughter, and then Shirley and Sheila, and then they had a son, Robert. Kathleen has 2 boys. Had 2 boys.
Right,
Robert's was living at this time, and then Jackie, he died. He committed suicide. And Bill had 1 son, but I don't know too much about him.
Where Dad was born in Pittsburgh, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think
And primarily grew up in the Homewood area?
Homewood, yeah.
Now, his father died when he was...
He was young. He died suddenly, just like Dad did. He went to work in the morning, and he died before lunchtime.
You don't know how old he was, how old Dad was, or...
His dad? I imagine in his 40s, too. I don't know, but I imagine that's about like that.
Now, Dad was born in 1918.
1918.
May 9th.
May 9th, 1918.
And his mother died, when, in the early 60s?
Well, we moved to Florida 69. Yeah, I guess it was the early 60s.
Because I vaguely remember, I remember going there.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, it was in the 60s sometime.
Now, he worked, obviously, most of his life at Pittsburgh here we saw, but didn't he work for Westinghouse before that?
I don't know. I might have. But he worked for Pittsburgh Erie Saw for 33 years. Bob worked at Westinghouse. I'm not sure about Dad with Westinghouse.
I think he told me at one time that he had worked for
Oh,
Westinghouse.
tell Dak. He had stories from every place he worked and what he did. I often said he wasn't old enough to do all the things he said he did. He had an aunt that lived in Johnstown, Johnstown. Du Bois, I think. He had an aunt. I don't know how she was related to him.
Well, I know what we need to talk about is that he spent a lot of his time, his summers growing up, in Chicora.
Yes.
Which is near Butler, north of Pittsburgh.
It's halfway between Butler and Pittsburgh.
No, Gibsonia was halfway between.
Yeah, that's right.
It's on the north side, northeast of Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there an aunt or something that...
That was where their old homestead was up there. And he stayed with people by the name of Smith a lot. When his mother, she was a widow and couldn't take care of them too good a lot of times, so she'd send him up there in the summer. And I think he spent a winter there too. I used to talk about walking so far with all the snow and everything.
That was a story he made up.
I don't know. I don't think he did.
But now the family property up there were 40 acres.
Oh, yeah, more than about 47 acres.
But before that, I think there was a much larger parcel that got broken up between the families.
No.
What was the family name? The McElwees.
McElwees.
His mother was a McElwee.
That's right. You know, his mother was a McElwee.
And that property belonged to the McElwees.
His grandparents. And they used to farm it.
And then that 47 acres was her share. I
don't know how it got to Grandma Driscoll. Or not to Grandma, no. She never owned it. It was up for taxes.
And he bought it.
And he borrowed. He was just a young man, and he didn't have the money, and he borrowed money to pay the taxes, and he got the property. I don't think it cost only a couple $100 for the taxes.
Wasn't it right after the war, or was it before that?
No, well, he was born 1918, 28, 38. Might have been around 38, 40.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a real young
We may
man.
still have some of the papers somewhere around there.
It might be.
On the deed or something.
It could be because there's still a few papers at home.
Yeah.
He liked it up there.
Mm-hmm.
He used to go up there, take the Boy Scouts up.
Bobby and Jackie had built a cabin.
They
up
had
there.
a cabin up there. And when I sold it, before I sold that property, I wrote to Bobby and asked him if he wanted to buy it. And I gave it to him at a reduced price that I was asking. I never heard whether he wanted it or not. Never answered me.
But you sold it for like $18,000, didn't you?
Yeah, around there a little bit
It was
more.
a nice,
But yes,
nice
it was.
bit of money.
Yeah, but everybody said I should have got more. But what had I done with it?
Yeah.
Because when I went up there 15 years later, there was nothing done to it. Well, I thought maybe people would go on and build houses and roads and stuff, and
Well, there were also some oil wells around there.
yeah,
I
but
don't
they
know
were
what
never amount to much, I don't think. It was nice up there. You liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we moved to Florida, we thought maybe we'd go back and build a nice little cabin and stay there for the summer. But we never got that far. But we lived in Gibsonia for how many years? From 54 to 69.
At 4393?
Isn't that funny? I can't remember. I got it at home.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Ewalt Road.
Ewalt Road, Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. It was nice. You had to have an acre of ground before you could build, and your neighbors weren't right on top of you. And I think it's still that way. It was nice there. That's where you were born. May the 6th, 1954.
And St. Joseph's Hospital.
St. Joseph's Hospital.
And who was the doctor?
Oh, Dr. Aldisert and Dr. Hughes.
Hughes.
Hughes was the main one. Aldisert was associate. Yeah. That place has been torn down, that hospital, and it's a retirement place for older people.
They probably moved into a new place.
I don't know whether they still have St. Joseph's
Sure
Hospital.
they do. I don't know.
I don't know.
What, do you have any other stories from growing up or with Dad or anything?
Oh,
Might make
all
it-
kinds of
All
stories.
kinds of stories.
All kinds of stories if I can think.
Tell me
of.
about the frog legs. Didn't you all
Well,
go to a lake or a cabin?
yeah, we had a cabin up at Canadota Lake, and there was about 15 or 16 of it up. I don't think that was before we were married. Catherine and Olive and I and Bob and all went up, and they caught how many frogs? Put them in pans on the top of the sink. We all went out to dance. When we come home, they were all gone. They were all over the cottage, under chairs and under beds and everything. And Dad said I did it. That was before I was married, because I know he played.
That was one of the tricks he played on
That's one of the tricks he played on me. Then they chopped them up when they found them and put them in a skillet and fried them, and those crazy frog legs were jumping all over the skillet.
you. But he did it.
I guess he did it. But now another thing, Moke had a pet frog under the cottage the 2 weeks we were there. One day that was gone. I got blamed for that. I got blamed for everything. And he did it purposely to blame me. He used to do that where he worked. He used to start arguments, then walk away and have everybody arguing about something. He said, I just dropped a little bomb.
What about time you all were fishing and Moke got a
Oh, yeah, he pulled the fishing line in. That was at North Park in Pittsburgh, and he pulled the line in and it caught in right in the edge of his nose. Not in the edge. What would you call this part of your nose?
I don't know, the bridge?
No, that's a bridge.
Yeah.
Where the nostrils come together.
You got a fishing line.
And
Fish hook in it.
so Dad had to put him in a car and took him to Allegheny General Hospital. And poor Alva and I were sitting there with all the fishing equipment and the lunch and everything. They were gone for hours. She was crying. She was worried. And there they were in the north side having a couple of drinks. Smoke wanted a drink. So they stopped at the Eagles or someplace and was having himself a couple shots of whiskey, and here Olive was crying and worrying about them.
Thinking he was dying in the
So,
hospital.
well, Olive, she gets all shook up about stuff like that. But, we used to be good friends of Uncle Frank's daughter, Olive, and Catherine, and had a good time with them. And Uncle Frank know about all his kids. He's got Hetzline,
I don't know whether we need to or not.
Well, I just.
Well, go ahead. Run it by.
He had 9 children, and one of them's still living. He's 92 years old, working every day.
Well, there are more than one still living.
Oh, yeah, Catherine's living. Catherine is 75, Gerard's 80, Olive's 83, Louis 87, one's 92. But getting back to us, we lived in Gibsonia from 69, from 54 to 69. Then we moved to Florida, to Sarasota, Florida. And we were only moved here June 69, and Dad passed away December the 10th, 1971.
Yeah, it was 71. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years and...
He, I guess you want to know why he died. You
Sure.
were there, you could tell that.
Well, I could, but I may not be around when this tape is being watched years from now.
Well,
so.
you should get on this tape
Well, I
and
might do that sometime.
have Michael interview you. He just took sick, 1, 2, 3, he passed away.
Is it a stroke?
It was,
cerebral hemorrhage.
yes. Yeah, that's right.
Or a blood clot that went to his brain, or...
Well, the doctor said it was heart, but the funeral director said, oh, no, he said that was a stroke. He said he was full of blood clots. That was 1971. And I stayed on at the house, and that was December. Then you went to college, or I should say Jim went to college in 1972, in September of 72. And here it is,
20 years later.
1994, and I'm still there, hanging in there.
With Joe.
Yeah, and I
With
got
Josie.
myself my little Josie now. After being by myself for 21 years, I met this nice little man. I was going to marry him, and
And he got sick.
he had a stroke a couple months before we got married. We're going to get married, so when he was well enough to go home from the rehabilitation places, I took him home with me. I still have him. And anything else we can think of?
Tell me what it was like in Pittsburgh, maybe during the war years. You rode the streetcar a lot?
Oh, yeah, streetcars. That's all we had. Well, we had was a few buses, and it took us about 20 minutes. 20 minutes. It was a quick ride into Pittsburgh. How many miles would you say that would be from Mount Oliver to Pittsburgh? Not 10 miles. About
10
8
miles, maybe.
Well, Uncle Louis used to walk that many a time, and Uncle Frank used to walk that. And now they got buses to take in. Pittsburgh, the city of all the bridges. Used to always have to go over the bridge to get into the... And it's not an island, though. Why do we have so many bridges?
Because there's 2 rivers that come together to form a third one.
Yeah,
It's cut in half
that's
by the-
interesting,
yeah.
the point where the Allegheny, Monongahela, and Ohio meet. That's a historic spot.
Well, talking about history, let me just run by a couple of things in history and tell me what you remember about them. Do you remember when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Oh, sure. I remember when Uncle Louis was sick that day, and then Barb, she came down can still see her coming down the steps from the second floor talking about it. We all got excited. And the papers were full of it. And then we were short of stockings, nylon hose. You couldn't buy nylon. You couldn't buy tissue. And we were rationed with butter and meats. And I still have rationing books at home, which you might like to have some. And they had big parades after. I'll tell you one thing that was interesting in my life was seeing Lindbergh. When he flew, you remember when he flew over the ocean? And then he was in Pittsburgh for a visit, and there was a parade out in East End, and I went out to see it. And to this day, I'm glad I went to see Lindbergh. That was interesting.
During the war, did you know anyone who was in the war, World War II?
Oh, yeah, but I don't know. The only one I know that was killed was Bill Driscoll. And
He died in the Philippines, I think.
Yes, I think he did. And Aunt Mary had a friend. Her son was prisoner for years. And we all had, if you had anybody in the service, you put a silver star in the window. And if they died, they would put a gold star. They had little gold stars about this big. And I think they were on little paper. I don't remember. And but you put them, you go out on the street and you'd see maybe some houses that have 3 silver stars in, and then you'd see one with a gold star, and that was sad. I'll tell you one thing that they used to do that they don't know, it wasn't connected with the war, but when anybody died, they used to put crepes on the window. You know what a crepe is?
Mm-mm.
You know how your Christmas wreaths are?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what they used to put on your door.
Black wreath.
No, it wasn't always but big flowers.
Oh.
It was a ring of flowers, like your.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anybody looking at this 50 years from now wouldn't know what a Christmas wreath is. Can we explain that?
It was but the black crepe was made out of flowers?
There was no crepe. We called them crepes.
Yeah, but
No,
they
it
were
was
named
a wreath, a wreath. Just like our Christmas wreath, only it was flowers, all flowers, different flowers. Maybe it was made of lilies, maybe it was made, and they'd hang them on it, and you walk down the street, you'd see one on it. We used to call them crepes, but they were hanging, you knew somebody died in that house.
Now, the other thing is they used to lay out people in the house.
Oh, in the house, yeah. My mother was laid out in the house. My grandmother, all of them. They just started, let's see, what year did Aunt Mary die? Well, you were
I was
5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So figure that out.
That was one of the first ones
She
in
was
your
the
family,
first one
in
of
your
the family that was laid out.
in a funeral home.
And then Uncle Louis was laid out in a funeral home. And now they don't even do that too much anymore. A lot of people are just buried the next day. And in the Catholic religion, sometimes they don't even have a mass. They have it later on. And more people are getting cremated now. And then have a mass in the church a week or two later. Some maybe 3-4 months later. But the majority of people have it about a week later.
Yeah.
No, you go down the street and you would. I remember Aunt Barb when she died. She was well, and she had a stroke on a Thursday morning, and she laid sick till Saturday morning. She was in a coma, and people would open the door and look in and say, "Who died?" Because they knew us all. And you didn't ring the doorbell. You just walked in people's house. Just opened the door and walked in and viewed the corpse and walked out again, which was interesting. And then in the evenings, like when there was a lot of people, you'd have somebody like standing at their door. I remember at our place, Uncle Frank had so many young boys. They were only teenagers, and they had to they took turns opening the door at night and letting the people
Being
in.
the greeter.
Yeah.
What about television? Remember the first time you saw TV?
I don't remember the first time, but I know even in around 1950, to me that was just starting when Grandma Driscoll had one. Uncle Louie never had a TV in his house. Yes, he did. Dad found an old one he took up for Aunt Mary, which didn't hardly worked. But I think that one of the first ones was like what I think that I can recall was at Grandma Driscoll's, and all of them had one. All of them, Moke had one. They were married, and they had one in
And that was in the early 50s?
early 50s. Yeah.
Did you have one when you moved into Ewalt Road?
No, we waited. I think we were there about 2 years before we had one. We couldn't afford it.
So even after I was born, we didn't have any.
Not that I remember. I think we waited 2 years because we got married and bought a new house and furnished it. Took 3 weeks vacation in Florida and had a baby all in a year's time, which was a lot of money.
How much money did Dad make? What remember what his hourly wage was when by the time
I
you got
don't
married?
know, but the first year we were married, he made $3,000 because I didn't when I got the income tax, and I still have that. That was in 1954 at the end of the year when I got $3,000. How we lived, I don't know, but things were cheaper then too.
Well, yeah, inflation and I was just trying to think of some other historic
And we
events.
would, the first year we were married, we didn't have money to buy Christmas presents. We did for you, but we put, I know I bought him a pair of gloves, and he bought me, I think, a pair of gloves, and put them on the tree. And he would wrap little packages up to put on the tree, hang on the tree.
As ornaments.
Match boxes and pill boxes and things. I can still see them. But it wasn't easy, but we managed. We used to save our pennies all year to buy a bottle of whiskey at Christmas time. That's how we got our bottle. And you didn't go out to eat in those days. Not like now. Once a year you went out. Well, they didn't have as many restaurants either.
Fast food places weren't around.
No,
They didn't have
no
McDonald's
fast foods. No,
Domino's delivery.
No malls. And if you see this in 50 years, it's going to say, what's a mall? They'll wonder what a mall is. That you'd have to explain someday, too, on one of these tapes, what a mall is. And different things. Radios, too. A lot of people didn't have radios over the beginning. My first radio was when I was 21 years old. Aunt Barb bought it for me for my birthday when I was 21.
You didn't have a radio before then? You had a family radio, I guess.
Uncle, we had a wee tiny one.
Oh, really?
Just a little radio, like, not as big as the one I have in the kitchen. I played that all the time. But I always liked it because when I was little, I used to take my mother's arm. They had record players then. And I used to take my mother's arm and pretend I was winding her up, and she'd sing anything I wanted her to. I'd pretend I was putting a record on. And then my dad bought me a little record player. Remember the little one you had? Your radio record? Well, he bought me one, something like that when, well, he was still living, so it must have been when he was 9 or 10 years old, because I liked the music so much. Now I got to think about 8 radios in the house. Not in use, but they're in the house, because Joe brought how many down?
We had 9 TVs. And records. Now, you can't buy a record now.
No.
You can find them, but they're very rare.
You can't find anything to play them on.
Can't find anything to play them on.
See, Joan was that way. Something happened to her record player, see, and she played it all day. And she looked every place, and she could not find a record player. And I was going to ask you, did you know what? And Russ tried to fix hers. And some lady, a friend of hers, came on one day, she says, Joan, down at the consignment shop, they got a little record player down there. She went down and bought it right away, and it works great.
Good.
She's thrilled to death. And I told her she should make tapes of all her records. She said, well, I don't have a tape. I said, Joan, that record player may not last forever. Then you'll have the tapes to play.
That's right.
But I can't convince her that she should do that.
If she found a new record player, she'd go out and buy it, so she ought to go buy a new.
She should get her tape recorder and tape these beautiful records that she has. So,
What about John Kennedy, the day he got shot?
Oh.
Remember that?
that, I don't think I'll ever forget it, neither will anybody else. With Ingrid Crandall and I were down at the Kmart. That was new. Kmart's in what year? 63.
Mm-hmm.
We were shopping at the new Kmart all afternoon. We come home. We parked. Remember, we had the garage downstairs? I was coming up the steps and the phone was ringing off the hook, and it was Cousin Mary, and she was crying. And she said, something about what happened. I said, what happened? She said, Kennedy was shot. Oh. And she was crying, and I called Ingrid and told her, and she was ready to go home. I never forget. She said, I'm going home. And that was terrible. We listened to it and watched it. And that was on I guess Thursday. On a Thursday, I'm not sure. And we heard it Friday and Saturday. I remember Dad Sunday, yeah, we were listening to everything. You listen to your radio. He says, turn the television off and turn the radio off. And he said, call the Crandalls and ask them to come home over tonight and spend an evening. We have had enough of this Kennedy assassination for us and for the children. And he said, we don't want to hear any more, so they came over and we had a nice evening. Then I was making homemade bread. One morning at 6 o'clock before Dad even got up, I was kneading it in a pan, and I had the radio on. They said Bobby Kennedy was shot. So that was something to watch.
Let's go back a few years before that, even before you got married. What kind of things did you do for entertainment? Did you go to movies?
Yes, I went to movies. That's about the only. I had no entertainment. I had a
strict upbringing.
A very strict upbringing. Too strict.
Mm-hmm.
I can see their point. They were responsible for me, and I was a sick little girl when I went there. What was wrong with me, I never found out. I don't know whether I had a touch of consumption or TB, or I think at one time I had a nervous breakdown. But see, my family didn't tell me anything.
Mm-hmm. They tried to keep it from you.
Where they should have told me. They should have told me all about my mother and all about my dad.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have much fun as a young person. Never went to proms, never went to dances. Movies, yes. And I had my friend Audrey, and I'd go to her place a lot. She lived on the north side of town, and she was my very, very, very best friend. And she died when she was 19. I was only about 21, 22 years old. I didn't really have any good times until my Aunt Barb died, and she died in 47. And then I said I was going on. I never wanted to hurt her. I said, I'm going to live my own life now. And I did.
And Aunt Barb, really, of the two aunts and the uncle you lived with, she was the one that was...
She was the one that was responsible for me, yeah, and she was good to me. But they're all strict. They were, they weren't as strict as... They were strict with Mary. And then I'd see. And then that's what I would worry. I wouldn't do the things because I knew Mary got hollered at for this stuff. Because I remember one night Uncle Louis came home and said, they used to call her Girlie. Girlie standing up the corner talking to two young boys. Aunt Mary went up right away and made her come home. And I got that if I walked up the street and I saw a kid from school come along, I'd cross the street because I was afraid I'd get hollered at. And someone just lately told me, I say about crying. I don't want to start and cry, but I might. They said maybe all this is on my mind now. Maybe that's affecting me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they talk about abused children. I wasn't abused, but maybe this is part of my problem.
Mental abuse.
Yes.
In a way.
It could be. I don't
I
know.
don't know. Well, you listen to the radio. What kind of things do you remember? I know there were the
Jack Benny, Fred Allen, George Burns, and Gracie Allen, and
what about some of the? I mean, we always hear the stories about how all the girls were crazy over Frank Sinatra and things like that.
oh, scream their head off.
And
I
you were
never,
like that?
no way, I didn't like him at all.
Really?
Never liked Frank Sinatra.
Were there ones that you did like?
Oh, most every other one, yeah. Uh-huh. Perry Como and Horace Height and Don Bester. Now, you never heard
I never
of
heard of any of them.
No, you didn't hear those. And Kay Kaiser and Lawrence Welk.
Lawrence Welk.
Yeah. In fact, Lawrence Welk got his start in Pittsburgh. He often talks about that, too. And, no, I used to enjoy my radio. And I used to sit with Uncle Louie on Sunday night to listen to Jack Benny.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, yeah. And then I used to cut a lot of, I had a scrapbook with all that stuff
That's right.
in. All the stuff you're asking me, I had
Mm-hmm.
a scrapbook. Now, a lot of people didn't have things during the war. You couldn't get butter. Lots of things you couldn't get. But we weren't without anything. Uncle Louie could get anything he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I remember once coming home with a big beef roast somebody gave him. That was during the war.
And that was because of being downtown and working at home.
Well, his customers, yeah. In Pittsburgh, one thing about that was a lot of hills.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of hills in Pittsburgh. Well, you got a lot here in Georgia, too.
Yeah.
But nothing like Pittsburgh. You go up in those mountains and look all over the city of Pittsburgh.
Let's go back to Dad for just a little bit. What
Okay.
you remember about him, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, but he went to, you remember which school he went to? I know we have pictures of it, and I just, but he went to Catholic school, didn't he? Probably went to several over the years. Didn't they move a couple of times?
I don't know. I'll tell you where you could get a lot of information about your dad from your cousin Sheila, because her little girl made a family tree of the Driscolls and asked me about questions, and I didn't know that much to tell her. So if you wrote to Kathleen or to Shirley, I bet they had a lot of stuff you would want.
But didn't he went
She
to?
may even have it like this.
Sure. He went to a trade school, though, I think.
Yeah, he was a journeyman machinist.
And he spent a couple of years in the CCC
A
camp.
CCC, yeah. He never went in the war, though.
It was in West Virginia, I think, wasn't it?
I think I got some papers of his at home. And Bob was in the war.
That's how come Dad didn't go, is because his two brothers were, or?
I don't think so.
Now, he was sick when he was young, too, wasn't he?
He had-
When in his 20s?
He had he said pneumonia of the hip. I don't know whether you can get pneumonia of the hip, because he had a scar on that one hip,
Mm-hmm.
because he had a surgery there. And he had a stroke. No, it was 21 when he had a stroke. And right before I met him, he had a problem with the hip. He was out of circulation for a while, and that's why Bob or Moke, I think it was Moke, called me and asked could he bring him to get him back in with his friends. Yeah, he was laid up for a long time.
Anything else you want to?
I'm trying to think. Lots of stories, when you were kids, things you remember.
What kind of toys did you have when you were a kid?
But not the same as now.
Yeah.
But baby dolls, and I had a desk and storybooks and things like that. One thing I can remember when growing up too, I don't know whether this is interesting for your it may be for years to come. They used to have a wagon used to run through the streets selling waffles. Like
Mm-hmm.
Waffle Man, and the Fish Man used to sell fish. And the Umbrella Man used to come around selling fixing umbrellas.
Fixing them.
And Rag Man, they used to come in horse
Today we
and
throw
wagon.
them away. And
A horse and buggy come, use a horse and wagon come along with pick up all your old rags. And Barb used to bake bread, and she used to get her flour in 25-pound sacks. She used to put all her old rags and stuff in there and fight him for 10 cents. Want to give her 10 cents, and she'd want 15 cents for them. And they'd sell ice. Well, because we didn't have refrigerators either. We had little ice boxes.
do you remember when you got your first refrigerator? Can't remember.
No, I can't.
Now,
And then and your washing machines too. They never had
Yeah.
washing machines when I was little. Used to have one of the ringers. You put the clothes in a ringer. You know what a ringer? Well, you know what it is, but
mhm.
later on, then they had spinners. You put them in a spinner in the spinner drive. Take it out of the washer. It was a little cylinder about this big, and you stuff your clothes in there, and it would spin them dry. Then I know when we got our first automatic washer was 1947. Frigidaire. Uncle Louie got it at Horns after Aunt Barb died. And then she used to before that, she used to put the wash in the washer, and pick it out with a wash stick and carry it across the floor and put it in a boiler. They had a little gas stove in the hot plate in the basement, and it was a big wash boiler, and they put it in and let it boil for a while. Then you pick it out of there. It was so hot with this wash stick, and put it in the stationary tubs. They had 3, and then you'd scrub it with a washboard and put it in 2 rinse waters. That's the way we washed every week.
Took a lot of work to do that.
It was a day's work.
And
And then you hung it out then.
hung it out to dry.
You hung it out to dry. And then sometimes they had a line stretch across the kitchen. They'd put handkerchiefs on the line. You didn't use tissues then. You used handkerchiefs. They all had to be ironed. Their tea towels had to be. Everything was ironed those days.
You mentioned about the fella coming in with the buggy and the horse. Do you remember what? And obviously, cars were around when
They
you
would
were
just
growing
start,
up.
yeah.
But were there still people that would have carts with horses and?
No, I don't
Not
remember.
very many of
No,
them.
I don't remember. I had one ride up in Johnstown. We went to church one Sunday when the horse and buggy.
But mainly there was cars and streetcars by that time.
Well, when I said it wasn't a buggy, it was a wagon,
Hmm.
and drawing a wagon, and then Iceman used to come around too. And boy, we used to like to fall back to get chips of ice. That was fun. They put it in the refrigerator, and then it would drip. You had to empty the pan at night or whenever it got full, and many times you'd forget it, and it would
Water everywhere.
well, everywhere, yeah. Yeah, they weren't too good those days. So I don't remember when they used to cook on the wood stoves, though.
You had gas stoves.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't think of anything else. Can you think of anything else to tell about?
Let me think a little.
I know something to ask. What kind of, now I know you've talked about some of the trips that you took. What kind of trips did you take back then? Didn't you go to,
Oh, and Catherine and I used to take a lot of trips. I went to Washington. No, we never went to Washington. We went to
Chicago, didn't you?
We went to Chicago on the train, and we got so black from soot. They didn't have air conditioning. Catherine washed her arms with cold cream to get them clean. We went to Atlantic City, and Catherine got sunburned so bad we had to go home. Her legs were swollen up like hams, and we went to Olive and I went to New York. We went to New York on a bus and stayed 4 days. Went to the Automat. Took a ride up Fifth Avenue.
What
and
was
back.
the Automat?
The Automat, yeah. Well, you went along and something like your vending machines now. You put nickels in, you could get sandwiches out and eat a whole meal like that. Took a boat ride around New York, around the island. It cost us $41 for the 4 days. Eating and sleeping and everything. And entertainment. $41. I still have it marked down at home.
Per person.
Per person, yeah. And we went to Niagara Falls, over to Canada. And then we used to go to Canada Lake. We rented a cottage, Olive and Catherine and I. No, Catherine, Loretta and I. We'd rent a cottage, and Olive and Moke and Gordon stayed at a motel up the road, but they ate with us. Another year we did it, and it was all, we used to go for weekends with 16, 18 of us and have a good time up there. And then after we got married, we went to Niagara Falls. You remember going to Niagara
I
Falls?
remember Niagara Falls and lots of trips to Florida.
Oh, yeah. Lots of trips to Florida. And they always said, you used to get so mad we rode through Washington. Every kid got to Washington but you. Now you're getting all kinds of trips to Washington. I hope you got this all on tape.
I hope that the tape is running.
I was going to
I'm
say,
afraid you have to do it all over again.
oh, no.
Well, I think that's enough, don't you?
That's it.
I think
Maybe
it's
we'll
something.
think of something some other
Yeah.
time we can do it.
Can I turn it off?
Yeah.
All right.